it's important, I guess, to understand and that recognising and confronting what's occurred previously, not attempting just to meekly acknowledge the circumstances. It's a really important part of the Yazidi community attempting to heal from those tragic events that occurred 6 years ago. As Australia's ambassador to Iraq, it's a really great privilege to not only represent my country at this event, but also to speak to and highlight the importance that Australia places in supporting the Yazidi community. We've had an enduring commitment and an active involvement in assisting Iraq overcome its difficult and troubled past and to navigate a successful and prosperous future. So we've got a range of programs underway that are all focused on finding a solution to and mitigating the impacts of the conflict in Iraq. And just to go back to 6 years ago, I am pleased to say that in our, well, I like to think in a way that did make a difference, pleased to say that the Royal Australian Air Force was part of the international effort to provide the life-saving assistance to those Yazidis who had fled to Mount Sinjar to escape Daesh. That particular humanitarian airdrop was one of our most complex humanitarian airdrops we had done in more than a decade, and it was our first mass air delivery of humanitarian cargo since the outbreak of violence in East Timor in 1999. I'm also moving, of course, a little bit into the future. I'm very pleased to say that Australia has also, of course, helped members of the Yazidi community establish new lives in Australia. We have one of the most generous and well-established refugee and humanitarian resettlement programs in the world, but that program is regularly reviewed so that it can be responsive to evolving humanitarian situations and changes to the global need for resettlement. And recognising the horrific events that had unfolded in Iraq, we made a deliberate decision and directed that the program needed to include a particular focus on Yazidi women who had survived ISIL captivity, as well as their immediate families. And so between 2015 and 2019, over 4,000 Yazidis located in Iraq and Turkey have been resettled through Australia's offshore humanitarian program. Noting that our initial efforts to resettle these women and families, it is pleasing to note that last year our program was able to evolve a bit further and has now begun progressing family reunification cases, and this is after approaches from Yazidis who had resettled in Australia. Of course, resettling to a new home, very, very far away from their homeland, we do recognise and have provided significant settlement services on arrival, including things like English language training, psychosocial support, financial support, healthcare, vocational education and training. And importantly, all those locations do have appropriate torture and trauma services available. And the connections already that our Yazidi family is making in Australia is really quite impressive as they make their new lives in cities and the regional areas of Australia. Already many have found employment in a variety of roles, whether it's teacher aides, starting their own business, applying their agricultural skills, which we heard earlier from Diane, on Australian farms, working in childcare. And that sense of community and care for others remains as strong in Australia as it does here in Iraq. I just want to give one particular example about during Australia's bushfire season, which was really quite horrendous this year. And there were a number of Yazidis who had acted as volunteers in the New South Wales Rural Fire Service and played a frontline role in assisting those firefighting efforts. But I've talked about resettlement there, but we recognise, of course, that the response to the genocide cannot just be on resettlement, especially given that strong connection to the homeland that Yazidis have. And so complementing our resettlement efforts, we've also contributed around $70 million toward humanitarian and stabilization programs since 2017. But the one that I wanted to make particular mention of today is our Building Peaceful Futures program, which supports Yazidis communities in Sinjar, and that's being implemented through Save the Children, Care, Humanity and Inclusion and the Norwegian Refugee Council. And through that program, for example, the Community Resource Centre in Sinjar has been rehabilitated and reopened in February 2019. That centre apparently is the hub for all community services there and is providing vocational training and youth engagement activities. And the centre also is home to legal aid and counselling, and that's to enable the people in the community to obtain their identification documents, which we know is so important, to allow people to reclaim their land, to move freely, to enrol children in school and to access healthcare. And that program is also rehabilitating water and sanitation facilities in schools, and it's also improving access to healthcare through the rehabilitation of the Sinjar Primary Health Centre, and there's going to be a construction of a new maternity ward. So all some positive steps, we hope, to making it easier to move home. Of course, COVID-19 has led to a bunch of additional challenges, not just globally, but also, of course, affecting the communities up there. So we've also distributed a range of health and hygiene kits, done a bunch of COVID-19 awareness and education to over 5,500 households, and provided additional targeted legal assistance. Plus, we've provided a further $5.5 million to IOM and CARE to implement a range of stabilization projects in northern Iraq. And really critical to what was talked about in yesterday's two panels, this we consider will assist with the rehabilitation of infrastructure and services, improve local security, create livelihood opportunities, and support continued advocacy efforts for an effective restorative justice framework at the national level, something also we've talked about today. So we, of course, recognise, Yazda's extensive support for similar projects, and so with our endorsement, I understand Yazda is soon going to become an implementing partner with IOM for the project. So we're hopeful that these efforts will help to ensure the successful and dignified return, very important, of vulnerable persons into their home communities. But as has also been mentioned on multiple occasions today, but I want to reinforce it in my own remarks, we also have to acknowledge, and notwithstanding the efforts of the Iraqi government, of Australia and of a range of other countries, that there are many, many Yazidi victims who remain unaccounted for, which, as we heard yesterday and just now, continues to cause great distress to families. It is one of the reasons why justice is so important, and one of the reasons we supported calls for the investigation and prosecution of individuals who committed war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide while fighting with ISIL in Syria and Iraq. And so I'm personally very pleased that we have been able to support Karim Khan and his team and UNITAD through additional technical assistance to gather the evidence to carry out these investigations. We consider that the work UNITAD does is vital to holding the perpetrators of what Karim said yesterday was every type of crime and depravity to account. So just in closing, you know, we can't kid ourselves that there isn't still a lot of work to be done to help the Yazidi community return to a dignified existence. And there's absolutely going to be challenges ahead. Yesterday we heard about what some of those challenges were. Today we're going to hear a range of other challenges be articulated. So we can't kid ourselves that this isn't going to be difficult. But we've seen the resilience of the Yazidis, along with the unwavering sense of community and family. I'm confident that the journey will ultimately be successful. We, of course, have been very pleased to have been part of that journey over the past 6 years. And particularly, you know, I've been very much enjoyed engaging with you, Haida. But to finish, I would like to thank you again for the honour to speak with you today. I feel a little bit of a fraud with all the such important and powerful messages that have been delivered. during the last day and now this session. But we've tried in our own way, in our own small way, to help this process, and I hope we can continue to do so. So thank you very much.